First, let's start with this case.
I, 45F, have two kids, 14M and 17F. My son has high-functioning ASD, and honestly most people cannot tell, but it comes out in certain aspects of his relationships such as thinking about others, compassion, etc. My son also eats a lot of food, way more than someone for his age. He is not overweight in any way, so the doctors have not considered this a problem. Here comes the problem. For years, when we have ordered food, he has neglected to realize that the food we order is for the whole family, not just him. My husband and I have both spoken to him about this multiple times, and usually he just gives half-hearted apologies. We are working on this with his therapist, among other issues he has. On Friday, my daughter had work after school, so she drove herself there while my son took the bus home. He said he was hungry, so I ordered a pizza and told him to save some for his father and sister. I only took a slice. Usually my daughter does not eat much, 1 to 2 slices. And same thing with my husband. That would have left him with 5 slices of a large pizza. About 2 hours later, my daughter comes home and sees the pizza box empty and starts bawling. She usually is not one to complain about food, and will usually just make her own food. But she did not have time to eat before work today, and during lunch she was making up a test, so she did not eat since breakfast. I was furious at my son and deducted the money for a new pizza, plus a generous tip to the delivery driver from my son's bank account. My son saw, and now he is pissed. My daughter thought it was the right thing to do, especially when this is about the 3rd time it had happened to her. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas, so my daughter should have paid since she has a job. My husband and I both are on board with what I did, but AmITheA, is my son right? Am I in the wrong? Update. For everyone saying we are underfeeding him, we have tons of food in the house. The fridge is stocked, we have snacks, ingredients, etc. My son refuses to learn how to cook, even when we have offered him cooking classes. Even without learning to cook, we have boxed pasta, popcorn, bread, vegetables and fruits, rice, etc., all of which require no cooking ability. He simply chose to eat the whole pizza. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Having autism is not an excuse for eating the entire dinner and leaving none for the rest of the family, even after being explicitly told not to do so. Having autism is also not a shield against the natural consequences of his actions. He ate the entire large pizza that was the entire family's dinner, and you had to order another one. It was only fair that he paid for it. In the future, perhaps it's best to affirmatively set aside the food for your husband and daughter and yourself, labeled so there can be no confusion, and then let him eat. Also, there are some diseases that either lead to extreme hunger or prevent the full cues from registering in your brain body. Regardless of his diagnosis, there should be consequences to his actions. How big was the pizza? Growing kids may have out-of-bounds metabolism. We have a pizza place that does personal pizzas. Maybe that's a better solution, or a large for the family and a small that is his. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. My son's reasoning is that he doesn't work, so his only sources of income are for his birthday and Christmas. So my daughter should have paid since she has a job. This is invalid reasoning. Neurodivergent or not, he can see that this leads to the conclusion that if you have no income, it is okay to take what you want from someone who has an income, which is theft. My son does not have much money to begin with, and he is neurodivergent, which makes it difficult for him to consider others. When enough consequences hit him, he will start to take others into consideration. Many neurodivergent people have difficulties in empathizing other people. Fair enough. He may not get how his sister feels, but once he makes the connection that being an inconsiderate hog costs him real money, he will get the picture. It is your job as his parent to set the boundaries and consequences so that he can understand right and wrong. Not enforcing a consequence that hurts leads to a failure to launch. He may need different ways to reason through things or alternative consequences. Work with his care team to get it right. What you absolutely don't want to be is that parent who is always excusing her child's behavior because he's neurodivergent. Next up, last week I had time and stopped into a thrift, and they were just putting out stuff from their truck. I am never so lucky to be there when that happens. The shops are always very picked over with just Old Navy or Target clothes whenever I can go, so I was happy I might find something. I started browsing normally and was finding some good stuff for once. Then I saw a group of 3 women come in. One had a little computer for scanning books, the other 2 had iPads or something. I assumed to check resale prices. Either way, they were clearly resellers and started grabbing stuff after checking labels. I felt a sense of dread because I wouldn't be fast enough to check, so I just swooped everything off the rack and into my cart in my size. When the 2 got to me, they started staring. I said, "What?" And one was like, "We'd like to be able to see what's on the rack, too." I said that they could as soon as I was done. She scoffed at me and said, "That's rude. We'd like a chance to shop these clothes, too." I just ignored her and started looking at things one by one, taking my time, then putting them right back on the rack. The women were getting mad and snatching things basically out of my hand. I held up a nice top and one of them tried grabbing it out of my hand and I said, "Excuse you," and turned my back to her. They got all pissy and one stomped away to get a worker. The worker came over and asked what was going on. I said I was looking at the items from the rack, same as anyone else. They said I was hoarding everything, so they couldn't get a chance to look. The worker said that I wasn't doing anything wrong, and then said to me, "Thank you for putting everything back when you're done." I finished what I was doing with the women breathing down my neck and took my clothes to go try on. One of them kept following me and asked me what the hell my problem was, why I was being such a witch, etc. I said, "Sorry that you're having a bad day, but it's really not my problem." Am I in the wrong? I just wanted the chance to be able to find nice clothes for once. From my POV, I didn't do anything different than people who fill up their carts and go try on everything. Plus, I didn't even take all of the good clothes to begin with. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. I donate a lot of nice clothing, WHBM, BCBG, etc., because I would like others who can't easily afford them to get them. Not so someone else can swoop in and sell my clothes for their profit. Sure, they're allowed to, but I'm okay with you grabbing the stuff in your size first over resellers. Plus, they had every other size to choose from. Now, if these were other women trying to shop for themselves, that'd be a little underhanded. You're not in the wrong. I'm pretty judgy about thrift resellers in general, but they would have done exactly the same thing you did if they had been there before you. The only difference is they would have been slightly more selective based on their researches. So, not the idiot. Kudos to the store employee for having your back. I hope you got some good finds. You're not in the wrong. Resellers have ruined thrifting. I have been thrifting for 15 years, and I used to find great stuff in my size all the time. Now it's just leftover Shein junk. They are the same as landlords IMO, and there are way more ethical professions. Next up, my mom inherited a huge piece of land from her father. The land was originally acquired to be developed into a subdivision, but my grandfather liked the land, so he kept it for his family. While entered to become a land where all his kids and their kids would build homesteads on, when he died, none of my mom's siblings really wanted it, so my mom was sold or just given their shares. I'm living on my own, but came to visit my mom, because both my mom and I are people who have not been around people. And that wasn't the care with my siblings or other relatives. There are tons of trails on the property, and I went to go walk with my dog and my mom's dog, both off-leash. My mom had told me that she has occasionally thought she heard motorbikes, but she had never seen them, so she didn't know if we're on our property, and since she hasn't seen them, didn't have anything to call police about. While on one of the trails, a motorbike zoomed past me, almost hitting my dog. I yelled at them, but they didn't stop. After walking some more, I heard what sounded like the guy coming back, so I got out my phone ready to take a picture of him. When A drove past, he realized this, slowed down, and asked what I was doing. I told him I was taking a picture to show the police who I was just about to call. He quickly sped off. I did call the police, and they said they wouldn't be there for about 45 minutes to do an official report, which was okay, because it would take me a while to walk back to the main house. By the way, any and all entrances to the property have clear signs that say it is private property, not to trespass. About 15 minutes later, I was in a part of the trail that parallels a road and was near one of the back entrances we have. A truck was sitting at the entrance. It had a different dirt bike in the back of it. I couldn't tell if someone was in the truck, but I knew the Harry. The truck didn't belong to anyone that was supposed to be there, so I took a picture of the back license plate. A guy rolled down the window and asked if I was the same guy, who said something to his buddy. I said yes, and that the police were already in their way because this was private property and they were trespassing. The guy gave me the finger and drove off. When the police came, I explained that hole. This was the first time seeing them. This wasn't the first time my mom thinks they have been on our lane. Officer basically told me I was wasting his time reporting such a minor thing, especially since it was Thanksgiving. He said that I should let people have their fun. I reminded him that this was private property and these people were trespassing. He shrugged and said, "Well, where do you expect people to ride their bikes around here when subdivisions are taking up all the land?" My mom and I want to report the office, but I wanted to come here and see if I'm being an idiot here in even calling the police on these people. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. They were trespassing and almost hit you. They didn't even have the decency to ask if they could ride their bikes on the property. Also, bikes tend to ruin trails, and so they could be damaging your property. The cop was super unprofessional, and I would report him to his supervisor. He had no business in telling you that. You're not in the wrong. Though I have seen other issues with no trespassing signs, where people changed it to private property. Admission $1,000 per hour, non-negotiable. Then it turns to theft and gives the police a few more teeth. Plus, if you find the people, you can take them to court for costs to repair the land. You're not in the wrong for not wanting strangers on your land, particularly rude strangers. If there are clear signs, then they should know better. If someone gets hurt on your property, then you could possibly be liable. I would file a complaint about the officer who responded to the call. Next up, ever since my dad was a kid, our family has done monthly family dinners, nicer ones than your average family dinner. It's something our family did when my siblings and I were kids too. We'd have grandparents over, and we'd all have a nicer dinner together. When my siblings and I grew up, we still did it, only instead of what happened before, where branches broke off over time and did their own. They decided we should include partners/spouses and our kids as a whole in one. By the time I was 19, the family had decided they would take turns hosting each month to lessen the burden. My wife was excited to be a part of them at first. We started during our relationship. I did the cooking to start, and then she took over after a while because she wanted to. My family had seemingly got along with my wife before this point, but they were overly harsh of her cooking, with the exception of my 2 younger siblings. She tried to make them happy, but no dice. I told them they could be kinder. They said she should cook better or cook different things. My wife didn't make anything they don't eat, but nothing was right. She grew frustrated, and I grew suspicious. So we hosted a couple of months ago, and I told my wife we were going to pretend I did the cooking, just to see. She told me she felt like they just weren't fond of her food. I pointed out nobody had the same amount of complaints as them, and they even criticized the steak and potatoes they all seemed to go crazy for. She went along with the plan, and when my family thought I'd cooked it, they loved it. Said it was so good, my wife had decided to let a real talent take over, that it was so nice to have something a little different, curry, and all this very lovely stuff. My younger brother and sister weren't fooled, but they enjoyed watching the rest of the family dig a hole. When the rest of my family heard it was my wife's food and not mine, they tried so hard to backtrack on all the nice stuff. The rest of the dinner went in tense silence, and my wife's eyes were opened. I told her I was done with these dinners, and she was my priority. She felt a little bad. I told her we could have dinners with my younger brother and sister sometimes. It's less stress anyway. When we didn't show up to last month's dinner or this one, my parents and siblings started asking questions. I told them each time we weren't going again, but missing 2 made it sink in. They told me we need to be there. I said never again. My wife doesn't deserve their disrespect. I told them they ruined what they wanted by being idiots to her. They said I was overreacting, making very relationship-harming choices, and treating them badly for simply having issues with my wife's food. They also said to think of future kids and how they'll miss out. Some of it got to my wife a little, which I have tried to reassure her about. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. It's pretty clear the issue isn't her food. It's her. For whatever reason, they don't seem to like her. Good for you for standing up to them. It sounds like your family dislikes your wife, not the cooking. I completely understand why you stopped attending the dinners. You're not in the wrong. But you really need to have a conversation with your family on why they are mean to your wife. It is unlikely this behavior will change just because she stopped cooking. They will start criticizing something else about her. Also, no, you do not want your future children surrounded by people who criticize their mom for no reason. You don't want them thinking it is okay for themselves to act like this, or for future partners to treat your children like this. You're not in the wrong. The irony, they were the ones who made the relationship-harming choices. When they were caught, they doubled down instead of apologizing and checking in on the why of their behavior so they could grow and move past it. You did right by your wife and your family.